Welcome to RHI's Sociable City Interviews, where we meet with global thought leaders on nightlife and the social economy. Today we are here with Mickey Bakst, co-founder of Ben's Friends, to support hospitality workers challenged with substance abuse and addiction. Through his own personal recovery and witnessing others in the industry losing their career or life, Mickey decided to do something. Ben's Friends hosts support groups throughout North America, with a new group forming in New York City.
Hey, Mickey, how you doing? It's great to meet you.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'm thrilled to be here with you. All that you've done for this industry, it's an honor.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's stating too much. But tell me a little bit about your own background. I understand you come from a restaurant background, and then you've been involved in this for a while. But what's your genesis? How did you get to be where you are today?
Well, I had a 48-year career in restaurants that I ended during COVID. I
Mm.
started by owning a small nightclub dinner house on the pier in Newport Beach, California. I
Oh,
lost that to my drug and alcohol addiction. I then decided clubs were not my thing if I wanted to stay alive, and I chose to go into fine dining because I love passionately the industry and the joy that I found in creating experiences for people. I have been in high end restaurants. I was in high end restaurants for 38 years. James Beard winning restaurants, nationally renowned chefs, blah, 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 blah. And restaurants have been my professional life.
yeah. Has this been in Charleston, or have you been in other cities?
It started in Newport Beach, California. Then I went to Michigan, which was actually my home. I had three restaurants in Michigan. And then I ended up 20 years ago coming to Charleston.
Okay. Well, I love Charleston, and I have to tell you, there's two things about Charleston. One, I learned that shrimp and grits was started at the Queen Street restaurant, I believe it
Yep,
is.
yep.
So I went there to get my shrimp and grits. It was just amazing. And then we had our conference. It's an old hotel. I forget the name of it.
The Mill House.
Maybe, yeah. It's sort of. Well, anyhow, they had fried chicken at our lunch. It was the best fried chicken. My last meal, if I have to like have a last meal, I'd go to Charles and eat that fried chicken. Yeah. So
Well,
that's ex
I'll make the reservations for you. Come on down.
okay. Well, hopefully it's not going to be anytime soon, I hope I'm going to live a little while. Well, that's exciting. And so how did the concept of Ben's Friends come about, and who is Ben?
I got sober in December of 1982. As I said earlier, lost my first restaurant to alcohol and drug abuse. And I knew that to stay alive, I needed to stop. And so I became sober in 1982. I chose, as I said, to do fine dining. And I worked around and played with the greatest chefs of this past generation, chefs whose names you know. And the reality was that, as you know, the restaurant industry is plagued with addiction. And I buried one too many people. I saw one too many people destroy their careers, destroy their families, destroy themselves. And as the years went on in my sobriety, and I was very open about it, I kept seeing people hurting themselves, and it got harder and harder to watch. Two situations happened. I did a dinner with a very well world renowned chef, and this young kid cooked the dinner. He was 27 years old. His name was Drew Tucci, and he cooked for the icons of the food and beverage industry. And that night he went home and he drank and drugged himself to death in celebration. And it broke my heart. My co-founder is a fellow named Steve Palmer, who has a restaurant group called the Indigo Road. And he brought a friend a couple of weeks later. He brought a friend to help him open a new restaurant. And the friend didn't show up to work. And he went and found the chef in his hotel dead, again from alcohol and drugs. And the both of us said enough was enough. That chef's name was Ben Murray. And as a result, Ben's Friends was created. Our intention was to start something in Charleston to help the Charleston restaurant community. Steve was 16 years sober at the time. I was 36 years sober at the time. We both, without sounding arrogant and trying to be arrogant, we both had big names in the Charleston community. And we went to the media and we said, Steve Palmer and Mickey Bakst would be at this location every Sunday at this time for anybody struggling with alcohol or drug abuse. And like 25 kids showed up the first week. And Ben's Friends was born.
And so this is more or less like a support group. It's not like a typical AA meeting. It's something that's more a support group for people who work in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, our belief is that it's a community. I got sober in AA, and I believe full-heartedly in AA. I encourage even the Ben's Friends people to go to AA. But AA sometimes turns off people and they can't get it really well. And as a result, they go back out, drink and drug. We created a community that was just F&B people who understood the lifestyle, understood the stress, understood all of the issues that came with working in a restaurant. And we found that that community gave people strength when they saw others. They saw a bartender who could stay sober. They saw a winemaker who could stay sober. And they started believing they could do it too. So we're very much formatted like AA, but without the steps and more a focus on community and sharing how we deal with issues of sobriety, not just in the restaurant, but in life.
So, Mickey, you were talking about your group and how you get people to come together. And like I said, I worked in the industry, and it was really easy access to alcohol. In my day, back in the 70s, early 80s, drugs were really a common feature of that whole lifestyle. And when I was working, everybody else that I knew who were friends of mine were playing, and then the opposite happened. And so I could hear what you're saying, and you get these people together outside of AA, as you mentioned, because there's a unique aspect of working in the hospitality industry. So when you're working with these people, these groups, can you tell me a little bit more about how you recruit them, how they come together?
As I said to you in our earlier speech, our conversation, we don't recruit anybody. People find us because they need us. People find us because they've hit a bottom. Other organizations have not worked for them, and they're desperately seeking help. And they reach out to us, as I mentioned, if you type sober in the restaurant industry, Ben's Friends will come up in Google. People hear about us from the media. We've been in national publications, local publications. Every time somebody reads it, who needs it, they reach out to us. Our leaders, we have 23 live meetings in cities around the country. Our leaders are people who heard about us and reached out to us. We create new meetings by people coming to us. So we do no recruiting. We do daily Zoom meetings at 1 p.m. Eastern time that can be logged in at Ben's Friends Hope. And it seems to be spreading. We have people coming. Yesterday, there was somebody from Montreal, there was somebody from the Netherlands, and there was somebody from Rio de Janeiro. How they heard about us, I don't have the slightest idea, but they're coming, and they all have two things in common. One, their addiction, and two, their commitment to the restaurant industry and the unique nature of that industry. and we come together to help lift each other up.
Wow, that's exciting. So it really has spread. So when was your first meeting? What year was the first meeting?
Our first live meeting was in 2016 in Charleston. The second city was, I believe, Raleigh, and that was in 2017.
Mm.
And then they started proliferating.
We're going to start working in Raleigh. That's one of our cities that we're going to work with, and they're actually
Good.
they're doing a showcase at our summit. Yeah, so coincidental. It's a lot of coincidence.
Good.
So the people contact you and they say, I hear about this, and they're calling from Minneapolis, and then you have a Zoom meeting, but how do you not convert, how do you empower somebody to take on this role of leading these groups?
There's a criteria. I mean, they have to be coming to our meetings for a period of time. They have had to lead a local meeting. They have conversations with myself and other leaders in Ben's Friends. And then we will launch the meeting. Myself or my partner or another Ben's Friends leader will come to their city and work with them. So there's a process. We need people who are 2 years sober. We need two leaders for a meeting so that if one can't make it, the other is there. And so we have that criteria and we go through a process with them.
Oh, so it's like a little bit of a training and orientation to get them to
Yes.
be focused on the same outcomes.
Yeah.
Now, how does the AA community relate to what you're doing? Do they see, are you interacting with them? Are you having some kind of like, what if somebody's going to an AA meeting? And do they know that, oh, well, you're from the restaurant industry, maybe you might want to go to Ben's Friends?
And that happens all the time, and vice versa. I happen to say this: Ben's Friends is a community, AA is a program. I believe that AA is very important, and I encourage all Ben's Friends people to try it. So this is the home where they're warm, comfortable, their shoes are off, they're laying back in their sweats. AA is where they get the knowledge on how to live sober a little deeper than we give it.
Yeah, no, I understand. But, also sometimes with people who are addicted, they end up having other kinds of mental health challenges or issues, whether it be depression or suicidal ideation or other types of issues that relate to their addiction. Do you have much interaction with social services or kind of a referral process?
I am not a therapist. None of us are therapists. If somebody has a issue, we urge them to seek the proper help. In Charleston, I may know some people they could go to. In Austin, our leader may know some people, but we don't, and we're very clear, we deal with sobriety. We can help you get sober, but I can't deal and we can't deal with the other mental issues. So we urge people to seek help for whatever it is they need. There's many organizations. Southern Smoke is now a national organization. Giving Kitchen, they provide mental health care. We don't. We provide ways to get sober.
Yeah. So you're very focused on one particular aspect of the challenges in
Absolutely.
the hospitality industry. Yeah, you can't take
Yeah.
on all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't believe that you can deal with your emotional or mental health issues until you get sober.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone.
It's a stepping stone, yes.
One of the people who inspired me to do the work that I did back in the early 80s was named Jim Cohen. And I went to Rutgers School of Alcohol Studies, and he did a special workshop. And there was about 800 people in that program, but his workshop had like 6 people. But his whole premise was, that he was the one that inspired me about licensing bartenders, that we license barbers, we license hairdressers, we license dog catchers. He said, we need to train bartenders to be aware of their responsibilities. And if they identify, and he was a recovering alcoholic. So he said, we need to train bartenders to recognize somebody who might need help. And so I think that was one of the lessons that I learned from him. How do we work with the industry to make them more aware of that the bartenders themselves, the people who serve the public, might also have a role in terms of some of the changes that are necessary.
I work with restaurants by trying to help them learn how to deal with the addict and how to deal with the employee who's struggling with the problem. I haven't gotten into how do we educate the community on something like what you're talking about, bartenders being aware. That's not my that's not my focus.
Okay.
My focus is the HR director who calls up and says, I have an employee who did great work, but is now tumbling and we're scared for this person. How can you help?
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
so then they'll talk to that person and that person will show up to a meeting?
Yes. And so an example, a young woman in Rapid City, Iowa, came to a meeting yesterday. She was 5 days sober. And her employer told her about us, and she came. Within an hour, I had 3 women in different time zones reaching out to her. And today she called me up and said, I'm going to do this today. And thank you for the people's numbers you gave me. I have been on the phone with all of them.
Yeah.
We lift each other up, and you can do it via the phone, and you can do it on Zoom, and you can do it in person. It's just important that you do it.
Well, it sounds like this is very gratifying for you and the work that you're doing, and to see kind of the legacy of Ben being spread all over the world. You mentioned that Open Table has also been involved, and clearly they have a role to have, sober people working in restaurants if they want to keep the restaurant industry going. So how have they partnered with you?
Open Table has been phenomenal. They financially helped us, but equally important, they have spread the message to every single restaurant that they're involved in. They send an incredible email to all of the owners of every restaurant that they're in, discussing Ben's Friends, discussing how to help their employee. It was fabulous, and they continue to support us on a regular basis.
All right, so we're getting close to the end here. What if we had a call 5 years from now? And I said, okay, Mickey, what's going on now?
If you ask Steve, our co-founder, we'd be in every state, and we'd be throughout Canada, and we'd be gently conquering Europe.
Oh, wow.
I'm 72 years old.
Mhm.
I have a vision of Ben's Friends living long past my time. I
Mhm.
have a vision of young people being able to find sobriety in this industry and realize they can be better sober than they ever were drunk or high. I have a vision of people getting sober, staying in the industry, and living rich, productive lives all over the country.
Wow, that's a good place to end because that's an inspirational goal, and I hope you achieve it. This has been fascinating for me, and I've enjoyed our chat. And we'll chat after I shut off for a second here. But yeah, this has been wonderful, and I wish you all the great work that you're doing to be spreading. If there's any way I could spread the word, I'll certainly introduce you to Carly. If you're going to Bristol, you should make plans to meet up with her.
I will be with my wife, and it is a romantic time. There's no Carly in Bristol for
Oh,
me.
no work there.
Actually, one of our Ben's Friends regular is a burnt chef ambassador.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
2 of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you have connections.
Yes,
You're going there for fun rather than for your mission.
yes.
Well, regardless, I'll still introduce you to her because she's been an advocate, and also Ariel, who does the New York City program. I think they need to learn more about what you're doing. And I don't know if you're involved in New York City, but we work with the Hospitality Alliance in New York City. So they represent a lot of the major hospitality businesses in the city. So
Well,
if you're,
Jim, let me interject. We're opening a Ben's Friends chapter on 13th Street on
Mhm.
April 2nd.
Oh,
I
okay.
could use any help you could give us to spread the word. I'll send you a flyer that can be distributed to restaurants to let the employees know that
Yeah.
Ben's Friends is in New York.